record reflect that all members are present and Mr. Duke is here representing the audit department. We will now ask for Mr. Conovich to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The way I say the pledge, sometimes they don't have a comment now. When we say one nation under God, I just go right through one nation under God without the pause. It's just a habit that I've picked up over the years. But anyway, we'll move to new business.
Item 2, new business. 2A, review of PPG contract and agreement, internal audit.
Okay, Mr. Duke. Mr. Duke, we'll have to ask you to talk into the mic and make sure that we can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
I completed an internal audit of the Plaquemines Parish government's PPG contracts, agreements, and leases project number 2022-01. Okay, now let's turn to page 6, I believe. Page 6, under control, COSO, control environment. Good internal control environment starts with the tone at the top of the organization. Control environment is a set of standards, processes, and structures that provide the basis for carrying out internal control across the organization. The board of directors and senior management establish the tone at the top regarding the importance of internal control, including expected standards of conduct. An inadequate control environment increases the risk of fraud, waste, and abuse. PPG needs to pay close attention to their control environment and ensure that good controls are in place and are operating properly. PPG council should sign and date the agreement indicating that the parish council reviewed the document before it was executed. In my opinion, to help ensure that contracts and agreements are arm's length transactions, contracts and agreements should be bid in accordance with the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's that states, although the Louisiana Public Bid Law does not require services to be bid, a competitive atmosphere ensures that fees paid for services are cost-effective. Therefore, management is to use the dollar thresholds contained in the Public Bid Law, RS Revised Statute 382211-2226, as a guide in contracting for services. Parish Ordinance 0161.
Well, Mr. Duke, before you go on, would you
Yes, sir.
complete the reading of the paragraph?
Oh,
So
complete.
we'll give
Okay.
out a layout.
At least 3 telephone or facsimile quotations are to be obtained for services costing between $10,000 and $30,000, and bids should be solicited obtained for the purchase of services exceeding $30,000. Any exception to this policy must be approved by the parish council in an open meeting. Parish Ordinance 01161 and Parish Ordinance number 08170 and the Louisiana Revised Statute 391621 should always be followed where appropriate. The legal department should ensure that their legal review takes place before the contract or agreement is executed by signing and dating the agreement, the legal stamp, and initial of the responsible person before the agreement is executed. The following internal audit observations, number 1 through 5, if implemented by management, can improve the internal controls over contracts and agreements. Observations. Observation number 1, the Revenue Recovery Group Incorporated. Let's move down to recommendations. Agreements should not be automatically renewed without the approval of parish council. To help ensure that agreements are arm's length, the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's best practice should be implemented. This should be followed. In my opinion, Parish Ordinance number 08170, adopted in July 2008, authorizing and directing the parish president to furnish copies of all scope of services regarding professional service contracts prior to execution to each council member. This parish ordinance should be followed. Attachment B. The parish council should sign and date the agreement indicating compliance with parish ordinance number 08170. The work in progress report put out by the sales tax department should be sent to the parish council for review and approval. The auditor would recommend that the legal department sign and date the agreement indicating that his review took place before the agreement was executed. Observation number 2, Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. Let's take a look at the recommendations. As you can see, if we take a look at the body of this, they did have a really good monitoring report in place for this contract. And if all contracts had this, it would be a huge step forward with the internal controls. The auditor recommends that the legal department again sign and date the agreement before it's been executed. There was no response from management. In fact, observation number 1, there was no response from management either. Observation number 3, Sigma Consulting Group. Look at the recommendations. This is a lot of repetition here. Agreement should not be automatically renewed. The ordinance 08170 should be complied with and signed off on by the council. Deliverable checklist should be in place. Management response. The HR department is in constant contact with Sigma regarding their liability policies. PPG has several policies and bonds that become effective throughout the fiscal year. Building valuations are requested on an at-need basis on new and newly renovated building in order to validate the true value of said buildings as to not misrepresent their total insurable values. Observation number 4, M.R. Pittman Group, LLC. The recommendation, here we go, it says the legal department again just needs to stamp that to make sure that the date is before the contract's executed. No response from management. Observation number 5, Linfield, Hunter, and Julius. This was a service contract, and I could not find whether the parish ordinances 01161 and 08170 were followed. There was no response to this observation as well. If we keep moving down just for an extra note to show the liability that we're dealing with contracts, as you can see, the graph, the parish contracts, agreements, and leases is 441. If we move down a little ways to the other graphs, especially the dollar amounts, engineering consulting contracts. You have a total contract amount of a little over 32.5 million. Total collected to date, or the total contract amount is 69 million, and the amount collected to date is 32.5 million. So that's just a huge amount of money. Engineering contracts, total contract amount is 104,753,000, and we've collected 77,771,000. That just kind of give you an idea of the risk that's involved with Plaquemines contracts.
Well, Mr. Duke, is some of that money grant money, or is that totally funded public money? I mean, not that it's all public money, but is it grant or is it
There's
revenues
probably
that we
a
generate?
portion of it that's grant, but I'd have to check with Ms. Hilda to get the exact amount.
You didn't see a contract, FACP monitoring or fire and safety commodities on any
I
list?
did see those, but it just didn't come up on my random sample.
Because I got invoices for the last year
Right.
monitoring and inspecting the fire system in the auditorium.
Right.
Well, it failed inspection a couple weeks ago. It hasn't been inspected since 2018.
Right. I think what we need to do with some of these audits, because I take a random sample, and my random sample may not include, everything that everybody knows about. So I think to help me out, and I don't think this is a bad thing to do, is that if anybody knows about something that could be a high risk to PPG, I need to know about it. So either I can include it or I can do some additional research on it.
Well,
Yeah.
if I'd have knew about this one sooner, because we even sitting in a building right here that the fire extinguishers expired.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the best way to go about that, because I want you to make sure that any contracts, any contract that's risky to Plaquemines Parish gets some attention. And there may not, and I have a whole listing of 441 contracts. And the way you do it is to take a random sample so that you're not, prejudiced one way or the other with this, and to have an objective view. But if something comes up where there's a high risk to Plaquemines, and the auditor should look at it, it should be included in the sample, at least as a preliminary review.
Yeah, I think that it's important for everyone to know, including those who will watch this on YouTube, that the way this operates is that you gather the whole universe of information and then you take a sample of that universe to actually delve into.
Yeah.
As you stated, you had Plaquemines Parish government contracts, agreements, and leases, total 441. And you went there and you picked a sample of the 441, and as a result of that, you have given us these recommendations on these, I believe it's 5. And so one thing that rings true throughout this whole audit, though, is, first of all, management has refused to respond.
That's correct.
Now, when management refuses to respond, then we put all of this work and effort in there, and they don't participate. We don't know if there's some way that they can improve this on their own or have improved it on their own. We get the results. The second thing is that the compliance with the ordinance of 08170 are transparency issues more than anything else, and they have refused to comply with that for many years. And I believe they are under the impression, because they've gotten some past Attorney General opinion, that the president is responsible for executing those contracts. However, in my opinion, and in 08170, we're not asking to approve the contracts. We are asking just to be put in the loop so we would understand what is going on a regular basis. We would know what the contracts are, because eventually we have to fund them. And so, I've seen this with past administrations. The lack of compliance with these ordinances causes the great distrust between the legislative body and the executive body. And so, anybody that really wants to work together would be compliant and would sit down and understand that the body is not trying to wag the dog. We're just trying to be part of. And go ahead, Mr. Duke, into the mic, please.
And also, too, Mr. Roussel, as you probably very well know, the charter clearly says the president should make sure that the ordinances and resolutions are followed.
They shall.
That's his job.
I think
do
it
that.
says shall.
Shall.
Yes. I want to make sure that they understand shall.
Okay, shall. Right. And that's his job to do that. Now, you know, there's no reason for a non-reply to my audit observations. No reason at all. And there's no reason why people can't invite me to their office to discuss my findings, to sit down with me for an hour or 2 hours if need be, or only 5 minutes, so that we can come to a conclusion and some sort of a conclusion that's good for PPG. But when we don't do that, when there's no participation, the controls are kind of lost by the wayside, and they don't ever get done from one administration to the next. And that's a sad thing. It's a sad thing when the oversight committee is trying to do their job and the administration is not allowing the oversight committee, and that's what you all are, is the oversight, to do your job. You have to work together, or the whole system is not gonna work. So, and my function is not gonna work either. The internal audit function for PPG will just not work. I mean, I do the best I can. I give you all suggestions, but the function itself is frustrating because I'm used to having sit-down conversations with management to figure out the best way to go with these controls. And whether or not they agree with me is okay. Call me, say, hey, Randy, I just don't agree with this, and here's the reason. And I'd say, well, that's fine. I don't agree with you either, but at least put it in the observation. Put it as a response. If you don't even want to put that as a response, that makes no sense to me. Okay, so there we go.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. And let me say this. The Internal Audit Department has come a long way with your leadership over the years, and we have made a tremendous amount of effort and reports and recommendations over the years.
Yeah.
Very few have been implemented.
Yes.
And, that's a sad commentary on the effort made to try to comply.
And that's the reason I reiterate the COSO control environment, and it all starts with the tone at the top. And it looks to me like the control environment here right now at this point in time, and the tone at the top does not care a lick about internal controls. People are just going to do what they want to do, period. There's no tone at the top. So.
Well, we've come to that conclusion that, we bury our head in the sand and it goes away, but the problem doesn't go away. It just manifests, and we just move on to the next problem. Ms. Newberry?
So on page 17, underneath your scope, you said you gathered 441 contracts through legal. Is that where all the contracts are being held? Because I know we passed the ordinance a while back.
They decided to do it a different way. Engineering has some of the contracts as well.
So you didn't get any contracts from engineering?
I did get a few from engineering as well.
Was any of that in your scope of plan?
Yes.
Was that CPRA? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I think the coastal protection segment consulting.
I know we did an ordinance asking the administration to,
I'll
gather
have to
all
go back and check my
contracts
spreadsheet.
and put it in one location, but.
Right. But what they decided to do, since this is the way it was explained to me, because I did ask the question, why aren't all of them in legal the way that we wanted to do it in the beginning? And they said, well, because engineering has more expertise.
But it doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter. Right?
One consolidate, somebody in control of one
place.
all the contracts.
And so that's, yeah. So they decided they didn't want to follow that control. So that's where we are now.
And so we still have multiple places to go for contracts.
Yes. That's management's decision.
Well, it was my impression that legal should put the legal stamp on all contracts,
They should. Oh, yeah.
no matter what
No matter what.
their expertise is as far as the detail engineering aspect of it. I can understand that they would rely on the engineering department for the engineering aspect, but the legalities of the contract should be handled by the legal department, and I think all contracts should be legal. All right.
I like that. That's
We're
a
going
good
in circles here. All right, do you have any more comments, Mr.
No,
Duke?
sir.
Any more comments from the board members? If none, thank you, Mr. Duke, for your work. You want to move to the next item on the agenda, please?
Item 3, audits in progress. 3A, port contracts and agreements.
At this time, I am in touch with Miss Riley, and she has sent me the information, and so I'm going to start working on that. Today I started working on it, so we'll see how long that takes. It may take until sometime in May, I hope, or June to finish that report.
How long did it take you to get the information?
Let's see, close to a month.
A month. And you think you can do it in a couple of months?
I'm going to try. Once I get the information, it should go pretty smoothly unless I run into some bumps.
Okay,
I just don't know what I'm going to run into until I get into it, though.
all right. Any comments or questions for Mr. Duke on this item? None? Move to the next item.
Item 4, approval of the minutes from the January 13th, 2022 meeting.
I'll offer.
Mr. Kanovich offers approval, second by Ms. Newberry. Are there any comments or questions or discussion on the adoption of the minutes of the January 13th, 2022 meeting? Hearing none, machine is open. And the minutes are adopted 3-0. Any further business to come before us today? I have a motion to adjourn by Ms. Newberry, second by Mr. Kanovich. Machine is open. And the meeting is adjourned at, I believe, 1:23. Is that correct? Thank you. Thank you all for participating today.